Nate stayed in bed for a while after Aaron left for work. The room was quiet except for the soft sounds coming from the living room. Jeff was moving around checking things. Nate called out from the bedroom. Jeff. Jeff leaned his head into the doorway. Yeah, Nate, I'm just getting your power chair ready. Nate sighed and rubbed his eyes. Thanks, I'm still thinking about what Aaron said. Jeff walked in a little closer. About Tom. Nate nodded slowly. I keep thinking maybe I was a little too harsh on him. Jeff crossed his arms but spoke gently. Well, Tom did mess up, but you've been through a lot with your mom. Sometimes when someone hurts you like that, it's hard to trust people again. Nate stared at the ceiling. That's what Aaron said too. Jeff smiled a little. Sounds like Aaron knows you pretty well. Nate laughed softly. Yeah, he does. Jeff stepped back toward the living room. Chair is charged and ready when you want to get up. I also made some breakfast. Nate raised an eyebrow. You cooked. Jeff shrugged. Toast and eggs, I didn't burn it this time. Nate chuckled. Now I definitely have to get up and see that. Jeff rolled Nate's power chair into the doorway. Take your time, and Nate. Nate looked at him. Whatever you decide about calling Tom, just make sure it's what you want, not just because you feel guilty. Nate nodded slowly. Yeah, I need to think about it. He looked at his phone on the nightstand. Tom's name was still there in the contacts. Nate picked it up but didn't press call yet. Maybe after breakfast, he said quietly. Jeff smiled. Good plan. The morning was just beginning. Jeff helped Nate sit up on the edge of the bed. All right, Jeff said gently, let's get you cleaned up. Nate looked a little embarrassed. Sorry, I guess I slept deeper than I thought. Jeff shook his head. Hey, it happens, nothing to be sorry about. He carefully helped Nate get changed and then pulled the sheets back. The mattress pad and sheets were damp. Jeff sighed a little but kept his tone calm. Yeah, your bed is pretty soaked. Nate rubbed the back of his neck. Great, now I feel worse. Jeff waved it off. Don't, I'll throw these in the wash. As he pulled the sheets off the bed, he added. Next time when you go to bed tonight, I'm going to double you up so this doesn't happen again. Nate nodded. Probably a good idea. Jeff carried the sheets toward the laundry area, then came back and rolled Nate's power chair closer. All right, your chair's ready, breakfast is still warm. Nate transferred into the chair and stretched a little. Thanks, Jeff, for helping with everything. Jeff smiled. That's what I'm here for. Nate rolled toward the kitchen table, but his eyes drifted back to his phone sitting on the counter. Tom's name was still there. Jeff noticed. You still thinking about calling him? Nate sighed. Yeah, I am. Jeff leaned against the counter. Well, eat first, big decisions are easier on a full stomach. Nate laughed a little. Fair point. He picked up a piece of toast, still thinking about whether he should finally call Tom. Nate sat at the table slowly eating his toast and eggs while Jeff cleaned up a few things around the kitchen. After a few minutes, Nate spoke again. Jeff, after breakfast you said you'll shower me, right? Jeff nodded. Yeah, after you eat we'll get you cleaned up. Nate took another bite, but his mind was somewhere else. Let me ask you something. Jeff looked over. What's up? Nate sighed. If you were in my shoes, would you give Tom some leeway? Jeff leaned against the counter and thought for a moment. I honestly don't know what I would do. Nate looked down at his plate. That's fair. There was a quiet moment. Then Nate spoke again, his voice heavier. After the visit with my mother, I started thinking about all the stuff she put Aaron and me through. Jeff stayed quiet, letting Nate talk. And now this whole thing with Tom, Nate continued, it just brings up a lot of that old stuff. Jeff nodded slowly. Yeah, when someone hurts you like that growing up, it can make every other problem feel bigger. Nate rubbed his face. I hate that she still gets in my head like this. Jeff spoke calmly. That's normal, Nate, stuff like that doesn't just disappear. Nate finished the last bite of toast and pushed the plate away. I just don't want to push Tom away if he's actually trying. Jeff shrugged gently. Then maybe the call isn't about forgiving him right away. Nate looked up. What do you mean? Maybe it's just about talking, Jeff said, hearing him out. Nate sat quietly for a moment. Maybe. Jeff clapped his hands lightly. All right, heavy conversations before 9 a.m. are above my pay grade. Nate chuckled. Fair enough. Jeff rolled Nate's chair back a little. Come on, let's get you showered. Nate nodded, still thinking about Tom as Jeff helped guide him toward the bathroom. Jeff was helping Nate get ready to go to the bathroom for his shower. Jeff opened the drawer where Nate kept some of his clothes. Oh, Jeff said, holding up a pair of pants. These have buttons between the legs. Nate nodded. Yeah, Aaron just got them for me. Jeff looked them over. Adaptive pants. Yep, Nate said, they're supposed to make it easier for you guys to change me. Jeff smiled a little. Honestly, that's pretty smart. Nate shrugged. Aaron saw them online and thought they would help. Jeff folded them over his arm. Well, he's right, that's going to make things a lot easier when helping you change. Nate chuckled. Aaron gets into problem-solving mode sometimes. Jeff laughed. I can tell. He rolled Nate toward the bathroom. All right, let's get you showered. After that we'll get you into these and you'll be all set for the day. Nate nodded. Sounds good. As they reached the bathroom door, Nate sighed again. Jeff noticed. Still thinking about Tom. Nate gave a small nod. Yeah, I probably will be for a while. Jeff pushed the door open. Well, one thing at a time, shower first, big life decisions after. Nate smirked. That might be the best advice I've heard today. Just as Jeff was about to help Nate into the shower, the front door suddenly opened. Aaron rushed back into the house, slightly out of breath. Jeff looked toward the hallway. In here. Aaron stepped into the bathroom doorway. Hey, quick thing, Aaron said. The order of Nate's incontinence supplies came in today. I just brought the boxes inside. Nate raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Aaron nodded. Yeah, I put them in your room. He glanced at the clock on his phone. I can't put everything away though, I need to get back to work. Jeff waved his hand casually. Don't worry about it, I've got it covered. Aaron looked relieved. Thanks, there should be wipes, pads, and the nighttime ones too. Nate chuckled a little. Sounds like Christmas morning. Aaron laughed. Yeah, not the most exciting delivery. Jeff smirked. Well, practical gifts. Aaron looked at Nate. You doing okay this morning? Nate nodded slowly. Yeah, just thinking about some stuff. Aaron knew exactly what he meant. Tom. Nate nodded. Aaron spoke gently. Don't rush it, talk to him when you're ready. Jeff pointed toward the shower. Step 1 today, get this guy cleaned up. Aaron smiled. Good plan. He started backing toward the door. Alright, I really have to go now. Nate called out. Thanks for grabbing the supplies. Aaron waved as he left. No problem, see you guys tonight. The front door closed again. Jeff looked at Nate. Well, looks like after your shower I've got some organizing to do. Nate laughed. Sorry about that. Jeff shrugged. Hey, it's part of the job. He turned the shower on so the water could warm up. Alright, let's get started. After the shower, Jeff helped Nate dry off and get dressed. Nate pulled on the adaptive pants Aaron had bought, fastening the buttons between the legs. Those actually feel pretty comfortable, Nate said. Jeff nodded while helping straighten Nate's shirt. Yeah, and they make things easier if you need help later. Once Nate was dressed, Jeff rolled his power chair closer. Alright, let's get you back in the chair. With a careful transfer, Nate settled into his chair. Jeff then grabbed a Chuck's pad from the box Aaron had brought earlier and placed it neatly on the seat before Nate fully settled back. Just a little extra protection, Jeff said. Nate looked down and shrugged. Probably a good idea. Jeff stepped back and looked him over. Alright, you're clean, dressed, and ready. Nate raised an eyebrow. Ready for what? Jeff grinned a little. Physical therapy. Nate leaned his head back dramatically. Oh no. Jeff laughed. Come on, it won't be that bad. Nate sighed. I guess. Jeff started pushing the chair toward the living room where Nate usually did his exercises. As they rolled out of the bedroom, Jeff said, Remember, the stronger you get, the more independence you'll have. Nate nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. But as they reached the living room, Nate's mind drifted again. Tom. The phone call still hadn't been made. Jeff noticed the look on Nate's face. Hey, Jeff said, focus on PT for now. Nate smirked slightly. Bossy today, aren't you? Jeff laughed. Only when necessary. Nate shook his head but smiled a little as they got ready to start the exercises. After the therapy session, Nate leaned back in his chair, a little tired from the exercises. He looked toward the clock. What time is it? Nate asked. We're going to be late. Jeff checked his phone and shook his head. Relax, we're not going to be late for your date. Nate ran a hand through his hair. I just hope she won't ghost me. Jeff gave him a reassuring look. Why would she? Nate shrugged. I don't know, people do that sometimes. Jeff leaned against the table. From what you told me, she seemed really interested in meeting you. Nate nodded slowly. Yeah, but it's different when it's real. Jeff smiled. Nate, you're overthinking again. Nate smirked. That's kind of my thing. Jeff chuckled. Well, instead of worrying about getting ghosted, let's focus on getting you ready. Nate looked down at his shirt. Do I look okay? Jeff looked him over carefully. Yeah, you look good, but we might fix your hair a little. Nate laughed. Great personal care and styling services now too. Jeff shrugged playfully. Full service today. Nate took a deep breath. All right, let's go before I change my mind. Jeff rolled the chair toward the door. You're going to do fine, Nate. Nate hoped he was right. Nate adjusted the wheelchair harness across his chest and checked that it was secure. Jeff noticed he looked nervous. What's going on in that head of yours now? Jeff asked. Nate hesitated. There's something I didn't tell her. Jeff raised an eyebrow. What? Nate sighed. I didn't tell her about my SMA or that I'm in a wheelchair. Jeff crossed his arms. The same guy who always says he hates lies, lied to his own date. Nate looked down. I know. Jeff's tone softened a little. Why didn't you tell her? Nate shrugged slightly. I just wanted one conversation where someone liked me before they started seeing the chair first. Jeff thought about that. That's fair, but she's going to find out in about 5 seconds. Nate gave a nervous half smile. Yeah, I'm aware. Jeff walked over to the medical bag. Do you want me there to help with your food? Nate shook his head. No. Jeff looked surprised. You sure? Nate nodded. That's why I asked you to connect the feeding tube before we leave. Jeff understood immediately. So you won't have to worry about eating while you're there. Exactly, Nate said, I can just focus on talking. Jeff nodded slowly. All right, that makes sense. He finished connecting the feeding tube and checked the line. All set. Nate took a deep breath. This might be a terrible idea. Jeff gave a small smile. Or it might be a really good night. Nate looked toward the door. I guess we're about to find out. Nate rolled slowly into the restaurant, his heart pounding a little harder with every second. He looked around the room until he saw her sitting at a table. Rebecca stood up when she saw him. For a moment there was silence. Then Rebecca spoke first. Sorry, Nate. Nate blinked a little surprised. Yeah, Rebecca, I'm sorry for not telling you. Rebecca shook her head gently. I get it. Nate looked confused. You do. Rebecca nodded and pulled the chair back so she could sit again. Yeah, online dating is weird. People hide things sometimes because they're afraid the other person won't even give them a chance. Nate rolled a little closer to the table. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Rebecca gave a small smile. Well, you're here and I'm here. Nate let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. That's a good sign. Rebecca looked at him kindly. You nervous? Nate laughed quietly. Very. Rebecca laughed too. Good, that means you care. Nate relaxed a little. I do. Rebecca looked at his chair for a moment but didn't stare. So, you going to tell me about your condition now? Nate nodded. Yeah, I have SMA, it makes my muscles really weak so I use the wheelchair. Rebecca listened carefully. Thank you for telling me. Nate smiled slightly. Thanks for not running away. Rebecca laughed. Well, the night is still young. Nate laughed with her and the tension at the table finally started to fade. For the first time that day, Nate felt like maybe the night might actually go well. Rebecca looked over the menu and then back at Nate. So Nate, what do you want to eat? Nate glanced at the menu for a moment. Fries, he said, they're easy for me to eat. Rebecca nodded. Good choice, I like fries too. She rested her elbows lightly on the table. So what do you do for work? Nate answered. I'm a freelancer, mostly writing during the winter. Rebecca smiled. That's interesting. What about you? Nate asked. I'm an engineer, Rebecca said, mostly design work. Nate looked impressed. That sounds a lot smarter than what I do. Rebecca laughed. I doubt that. Just then, a waiter walked up to the table with a small notepad. Good evening, he said. I'm Aaron and I'll be your waiter tonight. Nate looked up and his eyes widened immediately. Aaron. Rebecca looked confused. You two know each other. Aaron smirked a little. Well, Nate, why don't you introduce your date? Nate immediately looked nervous and leaned forward slightly. Aaron, no, please. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Oh, come on. Nate whispered urgently. Not here. Rebecca looked between the two of them, clearly curious now. Okay, she said slowly, I feel like there's a story here. Aaron tried not to laugh as Nate rubbed his face in embarrassment. The night had just gotten a lot more complicated. Nate sighed and decided it was easier to just say it. Aaron, this is Rebecca, my date. Then he looked at Rebecca. And this is Aaron, my older brother. Rebecca smiled politely. Nice to meet you, Aaron. Aaron nodded with a playful grin. Nice to meet you too. Nate quickly tried to move things along. Can we get fries and a strawberry milkshake? Rebecca added. And a chocolate milkshake for me. Aaron wrote it down on his pad. Fries, 1 strawberry milkshake, 1 chocolate milkshake, got it. Nate looked up at him with a half-serious face. Aaron disabled brother discount. Aaron crossed his arms and pretended to think. 15%. Nate immediately shook his head. 13%. Rebecca looked between them, trying not to laugh. Aaron sighed dramatically. Fine, 13%. Nate grinned. Deal. Aaron chuckled and started to walk away. I'll get your order in. As Aaron left the table, Rebecca leaned forward slightly. You two argue like that a lot. Nate laughed. Pretty much our whole lives. Rebecca smiled. I like it, it's kind of funny. Nate relaxed a little more in his chair. For the first time that night, things were starting to feel normal. Aaron came back a few minutes later with the milkshakes and set them on the table. Strawberry for Nate, chocolate for Rebecca, he said. Nate smiled. Thanks. Aaron leaned a little closer and spoke quietly. Nate, where's Jeff? Nate nodded toward the other side of the restaurant. At the bar, I'm fine. Aaron looked over and saw Jeff sitting casually with a drink, keeping an eye on things from a distance. Aaron nodded. Okay, I'm just checking. Nate gave him a small look. Aaron, relax. Aaron smirked a little. Hey, big brother duty. Rebecca watched the exchange with interest. So Jeff is. Nate explained. My caregiver, he just stays nearby sometimes in case I need help. Rebecca nodded understandingly. That actually sounds pretty smart. Aaron straightened up. All right, I'll bring the fries in a minute. As Aaron walked away again, Rebecca smiled at Nate. You've got a whole support team here tonight. Nate laughed softly. Yeah, I guess I do. Nate and Rebecca had just started talking again when Nate noticed someone walking toward their table. It was Aaron's boss, Declan. Declan smiled when he reached them. Nate, he said, your meal is on the house tonight. I already told Aaron, and don't worry, Aaron will still be paid for the table. Nate looked a little surprised and a little embarrassed. Declan, thanks, but can we talk about that later? Please, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Declan glanced at Rebecca and realized. Oh yeah, of course. He chuckled lightly. We'll talk later. Then he nodded politely to Rebecca. Enjoy your evening. Rebecca smiled. Thank you. Declan walked away. Nate rubbed his forehead slightly and looked back at her. Sorry about all the interruptions. Rebecca shook her head. It's fine. She smiled warmly. Honestly, it's kind of nice seeing how many people look out for you. Nate looked a little shy hearing that. Yeah, sometimes it's a lot. Rebecca picked up her milkshake. Well, now that the restaurant staff, your brother, and your caregiver have all stopped by. She grinned. Maybe we can finally have our actual date. Nate laughed. That would be nice. Rebecca stirred her chocolate milkshake and looked curious. So what do you usually like to write about? Nate thought for a second. You ever hear about the Vin and Ben story? Rebecca nodded. Yeah, a little. It was all over the news for a while, but what does that have to do with you? Nate leaned back slightly in his wheelchair. Tom, Ben's brother, used to work for me as a caregiver. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Used to. Nate nodded. I fired him, things didn't end on good terms. Rebecca took a sip of her milkshake. So you want to get him back as a caregiver? Nate shook his head. Not really, I don't trust him anymore. Rebecca looked confused. Then why talk to him again? Nate gave a small honest shrug. Because his story about Ben could be great money. Rebecca stared at him for a second. You want to exploit him? Nate didn't hesitate. Yeah. There was a brief pause. Then Rebecca slowly smiled. I'm in. Nate blinked. You are. Rebecca leaned forward a little. I'm an engineer, but I've always liked strategy, and if there's a big story there. She tapped the table. We could turn that into something huge. Nate smirked. Well, this might be the strangest first date conversation ever. Rebecca laughed. Probably. She pointed at him playfully. But I like weird. Nate relaxed a little more. Good, because my life is pretty weird. Aaron noticed the expression on Nate's face and quietly walked over, pretending to wipe down the table as he approached. Nate, he said in a low voice, don't be stupid and ease up on Tom more. Nate looked at him a little defensive. I told her, he said, and she's in. Aaron raised an eyebrow. So, this is a fake date just so you can get her to help with a story on Tom. Nate shook his head quickly. No, this is a real date, and besides, we need money for rent. If we don't get it, we might have to move in with Mom. Aaron's face tightened. And I know you don't want that, she'd probably try to pray the gay out of you. Nate gave a small shrug. Exactly, so it's serious, she's helping and it's not just for the story. Aaron sighed and leaned on the counter, clearly exasperated. Fine, he said slowly, but I'm not going to help with any of this. Nate nodded, understanding but still a little tense. Okay, just don't make things harder than they already are. Aaron smirked. Don't worry, I'll just be watching. Nate took a deep breath and rolled back toward Rebecca, hoping the date wouldn't spiral into another interruption. Rebecca, sipping her milkshake, gave him a curious look. You okay? Yeah, Nate said quickly, forcing a smile. Just family stuff, he added, not going into details. Rebecca nodded, accepting it for now. Aaron caught Jeff in the hallway and lowered his voice. Jeff, Nate's trying to find a story about Tom. Jeff nodded slowly, leaning against the wall. I figured as much, he's been on edge all day, kept asking me if he should call Tom over and over. Aaron's jaw tightened. I don't like this one bit. Jeff crossed his arms. Neither do I, but he seems convinced it's worth it, and he's got Rebecca involved now. Aaron shook his head. That's not going to end well, Nate's already been hurt by Tom before, I can see this backfiring. Jeff sighed. Yeah, but at this point, all we can do is keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't get too deep without support. Aaron muttered, clearly worried. Someone going to have to stop him if it blows up. Jeff gave him a steady look. Then we'll be ready, for now, let's just let him finish dinner without panicking. Aaron nodded reluctantly, though his eyes stayed on the dining area where Nate was laughing with Rebecca. Yeah, but I'm not happy about it. Jeff chuckled lightly. Neither am I, Aaron, neither am I. After the last sip of their milkshakes, Nate leaned a little closer, feeling more relaxed now. Rebecca, can we do this again? He asked quietly. Rebecca smiled softly. Yes, she said, but maybe somewhere where people don't know either of us. Nate nodded, relieved. I agree with that. Rebecca laughed lightly. Good, I like the idea of just us, no distractions. Nate smiled back, feeling a little warmth in his chest. Yeah, me too. For the first time that night, Nate felt like maybe things were finally going in the right direction. Rebecca picked up her napkin and smirked playfully. Next time, fries again. Nate chuckled. Definitely. They both laughed, the tension of the day slowly melting away. Nate rolled his chair toward where Jeff and Aaron were still standing in the hallway, talking in low voices. "When you guys are done talking about me and Rebecca," Nate said, a little amused but firm, "I'm ready to go home." Jeff looked over first, smiling softly. "All right, Nate, we're done, go ahead." Aaron shook his head, still a little exasperated, but stepped back. "Fine, go on, but you know we're keeping an eye on you." Nate smirked and gave a small nod. "Yeah, I know, don't worry, I survived dinner, I can survive the ride home." Jeff chuckled and started helping Nate into position for the transfer back to the car. Aaron muttered under his breath, "Somehow I don't think this is over yet." Nate just smiled, feeling a mix of relief and excitement after the night. "Home sounds perfect right now," he said, as Jeff began rolling him toward the exit. Later that night after they got home, Jeff helped Nate transfer from his chair into the bed. "All right," Jeff said calmly, pulling the blankets back, "let's get you changed." Nate nodded, tired from the long day. Jeff carefully changed Nate and then put a second diaper on him, just like he had mentioned earlier that morning. "Double protection tonight," Jeff said, "just in case." Nate watched the ceiling for a moment and then spoke quietly. "You and Aaron were doing that thing earlier, the thing our parents used to do to me." Jeff paused and looked up. "What do you mean?" Nate sighed. "When you two were talking about me like I wasn't there, it kind of made me feel like a kid again, like I didn't even have a say." Jeff sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. "Aaron and I were just looking out for you." Nate nodded. "I know, but still." There was a short silence. Then Jeff spoke more softly. "Being a disabled man is low-key unfair sometimes." Nate looked over at him. "Yes." Jeff nodded. "Yeah, people either treat you like you're fragile or like you don't get to make your own decisions, even when they mean well." Nate thought about that. That's exactly how it felt. Jeff adjusted the blanket over him. "But tonight you went on a date, handled yourself, and made your own choices. That counts for something." Nate relaxed a little into the pillow. "Thanks for saying that." Jeff stood up and turned off the main light, leaving the bedside lamp on. "Get some sleep, Nate, big day." Nate closed his eyes, still thinking about Rebecca, Tom, and everything that might come next. Later that night, the front door opened and Aaron walked into the house. After putting his keys down, he went straight to Nate's room. Nate was already in bed. Aaron leaned on the doorframe. "Nate, whatever you do with this Ben situation, whether you embarrass yourself or Tom, just remember something." Nate looked over. "What?" Aaron continued. "If I wasn't here, who was?" Nate rolled his eyes. "Tom, but he basically lied about being Ben's brother." Aaron stepped a little closer. "Was the job description telling you about their past or personal life?" Nate paused. "No." Aaron nodded. "Then it wasn't important." Nate tried to argue. "But he..." Aaron cut him off gently but firmly. "Wasn't important." The room went quiet for a moment. Nate stared at the ceiling. "You really think I'm making too big a deal out of this?" Aaron shrugged. "I think you're hurt and trying to turn that hurt into a story." Nate didn't answer right away. Aaron softened his voice. "Just be careful, Nate, not every story is worth the damage it causes." Nate sighed. "Yeah, I hear you." Aaron turned toward the door. "Good, now get some sleep." Nate watched him leave, still unsure if Aaron was right or not. Nate sighed and then mocked Aaron's tone a little. "Oh yeah, if you were in my shoes, you'd probably be the same way." Aaron stopped in the doorway and turned back. "Well," he said calmly, "I can't now." Nate looked at him, realizing what Aaron meant. Aaron shrugged slightly. "So we'll never really know, will we?" Nate didn't have a comeback this time. Aaron softened his voice. "Just get some rest, Nate, you've had a long day." Nate let out a tired breath. "Yeah, I guess I have." Aaron nodded once and turned off the hallway light before walking away. Nate lay there in the quiet room, staring at the ceiling, his mind still bouncing between Rebecca, Tom, and everything that had happened that day. Sleep didn't come right away. The next morning, the smell of breakfast filled the house. Aaron was in the kitchen, moving between the stove and the counter, while Jeff was in Nate's room helping him get ready for the day. Jeff adjusted Nate's shirt and made sure everything was set. "All right," Jeff said, "almost done." From the kitchen, Aaron called out, "Nate, when you get in your chair, come into the kitchen." Nate raised an eyebrow. "That sounds serious." Jeff smirked a little. "Yeah, that didn't sound like a casual good morning." Nate sighed. "What do you think this is about?" Jeff shrugged. "Knowing Aaron, probably about Tom or your plan." Nate nodded. "Yeah, I figured." Jeff helped Nate transfer into his chair and made sure he was comfortable. "All right, you're good to go." Nate took a breath. "Guess I'm walking into a meeting." Jeff chuckled. "More like a family intervention." Nate rolled his eyes but smiled slightly. "Great, just what I needed before breakfast." He started rolling toward the kitchen, bracing himself for whatever Aaron was about to say. Aaron stood by the stove, arms crossed, clearly already thinking about what he wanted to say. "Nate, I know I'm not dad or anything," he started, "but I heard what you said to Rebecca last night." Nate rolled closer into the kitchen, his expression tightening a little. "And?" Aaron sighed. "All I'm saying is you need to stop chasing this whole Tom situation. You fired him, remember?" Nate didn't hesitate. "We have bills to pay, Aaron. You don't want to move back in with Mom." Aaron looked straight at him, serious. "I think if moving back in with Mom keeps you from messing up your own life, then we should." Nate blinked. "You wouldn't." Aaron stepped a little closer. "Try me." The room went quiet. Jeff, standing off to the side, stayed out of it for once. Nate shook his head. "You really think I'm about to ruin my life over this?" Aaron didn't back down. "I think you're about to cross a line you can't uncross." Nate's voice got quieter but more intense. "It's just a story." Aaron shot back immediately. "No, it's a person, and you're talking about using him." That hit a little harder. Nate looked away for a second. "We need money." Aaron softened just slightly. "I know, but not like this." Nate exhaled, frustrated. "So what your plan is, we just give up and go back to Mom?" Aaron shook his head. "My plan is you don't burn everything down trying to fix one problem." Nate didn't respond right away. Jeff finally spoke gently from the side. "Maybe there's a middle ground here." Both brothers glanced at him. But neither of them answered. "Not yet." Nate looked straight at Aaron, frustration and urgency mixing together. $150,000, he said, "that could get us out of debt." Aaron didn't hesitate. "Nate, I'm putting my foot down on this one, you're grounded." Nate stared at him, almost incredulous. "I'm 21, you can't ground me." Aaron stepped closer, voice firm. "Then stop acting like a child." That hit harder than Nate expected. Nate's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to fix things." Aaron shook his head. "No, you're trying to control everything because you're scared." Nate looked away. "We are in a bad spot, Aaron." "I know," Aaron said, calmer now, "but there's a difference between solving a problem and making a worse one." Jeff shifted slightly, watching both of them. Nate spoke again, quieter. "So what, I just drop it?" Aaron nodded. "Yes." Nate let out a slow breath. "And if I do?" Aaron held his gaze. "Then you're doing it without my support." The room went silent again. That part landed the hardest. Jeff finally stepped in gently. "Nate, whatever you decide, just make sure you can live with it after." Nate didn't answer. He just sat there, caught between the money, the past with Tom, and the people trying to protect him. Aaron took a breath, his voice tight but steady. "Nate, I'm sorry, I'm doing this for your own good." Before Nate could react, Jeff hesitated for a second, then handed Aaron Nate's phone, iPad, and computer. Nate's eyes widened. "Jeff, what are you doing? I've got work to do." Aaron shook his head. "No, you don't." Nate's voice rose. "Aaron, don't." But Aaron was already moving. He put everything into a box, walked over to the sink, shoved it underneath, and turned the water on. Nate froze. "Aaron, what the hell's?" Water started soaking into the box. Aaron stood there, jaw set. No hesitation, no regret. Jeff stayed silent, watching, not stepping in. Nate's voice cracked with anger. "That was my work, my stuff." Aaron finally looked at him. "And it was feeding something that was going to hurt you." Nate shook his head, furious. "You don't get to decide that." Aaron fired back. "Someone has to when you woe." The room felt heavy. Nate looked between both of them. You just took away my way to work to make money to fix things. Aaron didn't flinch. I took away the thing that was pushing you to do something you regret. Nate's breathing slowed, but his eyes stayed locked on the soaked box. Jeff finally spoke quietly. Nate, I'm sorry. Nate didn't answer. He just sat there staring, hurt, angry, and now with something else creeping in. Powerlessness. Nate turned his chair without saying a word and rolled out of the kitchen. The silence he left behind felt heavier than the argument. Aaron stood there for a moment, staring at the sink, then ran a hand through his hair. I had to do it, he said. I'm his older brother. He was about to do something he might not come back from. Jeff looked at him unsure.